So if you go to fontawesome.com, and this is, by the way, just so you know, this is kind of a commercial site. I mean, yeah, they allow you to start for free and get more with Pro. They've got a tiered pricing system like that, but they do make you sign up, and you have to say your email address and all that, which is fine. No, I don't have a problem with that for like social media or something like that, but I think this is a little bit, not quite predatory, but just a little bit overbearing. Just so you know, you do not need to actually sign up for anything in order to use Font Awesome. There are other websites out there. There is also fontawesome.cc, but this is more like this is a documentation website, really, where it shows you how to use these things. And I've had problems with these on CC. I don't recall having these problems in the past, but just earlier today when I was kind of prepping for this and deciding to try this out again, and you're supposed to just be able to tap on these and get it to copy, that code to the clipboard. And at least on the Mac, I couldn't get it to actually put it on the clipboard. Let's see if it did anything here. I'm just going to try pasting it in here somewhere. Yeah, see, it's not working for me. So I'm not sure. I don't think I had that problem with them before. But anyway, it's still, I mean, it's a good website for just documentation, but I'll close it because otherwise it's not too useful. But okay, so to actually get Font Awesome using, what you need is their CSS. And that, like most popular CSS libraries, it's hosted up on CDN.js. So if I just open up a new tab here, and I just do a search for Font Awesome CDN.js, right? If you might recall that one, we brought that in for, did we use that for the zero? I think we did for our zero.css, or normalize rather. I think we use CDN.js for that. And when we do jQuery, when I show you jQuery, I guess on Thursday or Friday, we'll also grab the CDN.js version. It's very useful for these content chunks. So CDN.js and awesome. There we go. Font Awesome. All right, where is it? Looks like it's just going to the home page, but all right, let's try searching on here. Font Awesome. There we go. Font Awesome. Let me go there. And again, this is the link. I put this link up directly, so you don't need to do what I just did and search through Google in order to get there. I was just kind of surprised that the page didn't come up right off the bat. But anyway, this is Font Awesome. Let's go ahead and grab the link here. And I'm just going to grab the all. You might recall what min stands for. Min means minify, which just means all the white space has been removed and so on. But I'm just going to grab the link here. So copy the URL from here. I don't know what regular is. Oh, yeah, I do know what regular is. Just grab the all one, just so for now. I mean, if you just know, like at some point, yeah, I only need to do, brands in the future, that's going to be a smaller file and a smaller overhead. But for now, if we don't know what we're going to be using it for yet, let's just go ahead and grab all, copy that. And I'm going to put that into the CSS here. All the way at the top, where I think we've got, this is where we're bringing in the Google font here, so I'll just put it right underneath there. This is another @import URL, and then paste that in. And now, once we've done that, once we've got that CSS in there, we'll be able to use their icons just by adding certain things to our markup. Now, this is something that I don't tend to like adding stuff to my markup. It's not technically necessary, but sometimes it's necessary. And if you start making too big a deal out of it, then you're just being stuffy for no good reason. Try to keep your code as clean as you can.
Hey, Mr. Bispo, quick question. For the link, did you copy, just copy link, or did you copy link tag?
I copied the link. Because if you copy the tag, then you'd have to put it into the HTML, which would also be fine, but I like to import it directly into the CSS. So you copy the link, that first chain, and then you have to type in @import URL and then paste it in like that. Actually, I think these days it'll work without the URL. I think you can just put @import and then put in quotes. but I would want to test that and make sure. So other than the normalized, this is going to be the first, well, I guess the Google fonts counts too, but this third-party library that's been built for us in CSS. So now that you've got the library in there, now is when you go to fontawesome.com and check out the documentation there. So again, you can do all this stuff without signing up for their dumb website. You can go to icons, and it'll take you to a search page. So this is the limitation on this. They don't give you the categories and so on. If you want the categories, although unless this is clickable, yeah, okay, so you can get to the categories here. But I'm just going to type in, for instance, I want to get, like I said, the pancake stack or the hamburger stack, icon in order to drop down the menu on a tap. And so I'm just going to look up bars. And here it is. Here are the different bars icons that they've got. So just so you know, there is a special HTML entity that exists specifically in order to get the 3 bars. And of course you can, create a font weight bold on it if you want thicker ones like they've done here. But sometimes it's easier just to do something like this. And they do have stuff that, as far as I know, does not exist in HTML entities. For instance, if you wanted an icon for a shopping cart, if you just type in cart, then they've got various shopping carts that you can get and use as well. And of course, they've got thousands of these things in different categories. But here, let's go ahead and look for bars again, or menu, or I bet this will come up with menu as well, even though they're bars. Yeah, this is the first thing that shows up. So I'm going to grab the second one here, which is not the big bold one, but just the medium one or the regular one. Tap on it. And if you scroll down here, then they will show you the code to put into your markup. There's where the documentation breaks down. And of course, if you're using React or whatever, then you can grab those as well. So if I just tap on this right here, and it copies it, and unlike the other website, this one should actually work. And so you guys might recognize this is HTML, right? So it is an I element, which is, it stands for italic. It's an italic element, but it's one that's really not used for much anymore because we tend to use an emphasis tag instead. But it's nice and non-semantic, and I don't think it's ever going to go away. So if you just need a little thing, it's almost like a span would have worked just about as well, I think. But they wound up using I for whatever reason, and that's fine. So copy that, and I'm going to go to my markup. And I'm going to paste it, and I'm not going to put it inside nav here. I'm going to make it a separate element. And I'm going to put it, I think, in the header after the H2 and the H3. So it's the last thing inside header. And I'm just going to paste. And there it is. The I class equals FA regular, FA bars. And I'm going to save it. And when I go to the browser to check it, it's not going to work. I think this is what they do to try to force you to sign out. I don't know if it's that mean or not what they're doing. Let's see, where did it go? There we go. Okay, so you probably can't see it, but what it's giving me is this thing like it can't find, like it doesn't know what that icon is. It doesn't know what that character is. So all they're doing is they're leaving off one little piece that you need to know. And that is at the beginning of this, you have to type in FAS and then a space. So I'm sorry about that. I wish they didn't do that too. It would be nice if you could just copy and paste it and have it work. But you don't. Type in FAS space. Now I say at the beginning of that, it actually doesn't matter where you put it. There it is. So we got our pancake stack icon. Okay, so that's how to use Font Awesome. So we can get that in there. And it's text. So we'll be able to style it using, bold or change the color of it. We change the background color, etc. So let me do a quick detour and tell you guys what this is doing in here. You might notice that there are several different values. There's 3 different values, and they're separated by spaces. So there's FAS, and then there's FA-regular, and there's FA-bars. And what this is 3 different values for the class attribute. And that means that it has 3 different classes on it. So I could select for this element using any of those classes if I wanted to. So if I just pop over to my main.css, and let's see, where am I going to put this in my CSS organization, do I think? I guess downstairs is where the nav stuff is, so that makes sense here. I think that before the media queries, yeah, here's our nav section. So see, I'll put it right above nav here. So I could do something like .fas. Remember, that's one of the selectors that was put on there. And if we do color red and go over here and refresh, now it's red. But I could also do, what are the other classes? So I could also select for FA-regular and get rid of the .fas. Regular. That also works. And the third one was FA bars, right? So change FA regular to FA bars, and that works too. So that's what's happening here. That's what's going on. You've got 3 different classes that have been put on there. So it's almost like, well, not quite object-oriented, but it's like the idea is a modular idea. So the idea is that you could have multiple things on the page, and several of the things you might want to put FA bars on, and maybe some of the other things you want to put FA regular on, and there might be some overlap between them, but generally you want to keep those separate so that they can overlap or not, depending on what you need. So if you look at, the source code for, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or something like that, you're going to see just a boat ton of this stuff all over the place. It gets to be this huge, like breathtakingly complex abstract system that they're using of overlapping CSS styles, or rather CSS classes all over the place. So obviously we can't get much into that just now. I just want to let you know that that's what's happening. The order of these matters not one whit. So at first I said, yeah, put FAS at the beginning because that's just the way it's done, but it doesn't have to be. I could put it at the end or in the middle, and it all works just fine. As long as there are spaces delineating them, then you're good to go. So
Hey,
that's what
Mr.
that
Bispo,
is.
where did you put the FAS in the main CSS?
I
For the
just, I put it down here. It's under the nav section towards the bottom before the media queries, just because that's where my nav stuff is. But you can put it wherever you want. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this again. I don't actually need it. I was just showing you about selecting for that guy using different classes.
Oh, okay.
So that's what this means. You cannot have multiple IDs on an element, as far as I know, but you certainly can have multiple classes on an element, and a lot of the web would break if we couldn't. So that's what's happening there. So we are now calling in font awesome and using this guy. So that's cool. So let's get this guy put somewhere. And I think
Well,
that
you could also just call iClass too, couldn't you?
say that again.
I said you could also just call iClass too, couldn't you?
I element, I tag, right? Not that, but just
Yeah.
I. Or what I was going to do is go header I, just in case there happened to be somewhere else on some page that also used a metallic element.
Right.
So that's probably what I will select for using this. So let's get this. You can use header I like I'm doing, or you could just use I, or you could use one of those other selectors. If we had more time, we would talk more about specificity. But just so you know right now, if you don't know this, if you go back and look at that SIP levels thing, like the Star Wars specificity infographic, that class attributes, or not class attributes, but class selectors are more specific than our tag selectors that we've been using. So if you have, well, no, let's not get into that. I'm sorry.
Is it just me, or is he cutting out for everybody else too?
Did I cut out on the audio?
Yeah,
You're not the
kind of.
only one.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
That's okay. I was just doing a little sidebar anyway. I think I'm just going to skip that and we'll go back to doing our business here. Okay, so I'm going to do header I, or you could grab one of those class selectors, anything you want to. So I'm going to take this guy and put it over here instead. In fact, this is for mobile, right? So let's take this down to mobile size. So I'm going to put it over here, and I'll probably give it a padding and like an outline here. Let's see how things go here. So I'm going to do, give it a color of that dark purple here. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to give it some padding. just a little bit, 0.5 em. So it's got a little bit of space around it. And let's give it a border. And let's see, we've been using 1 pix, so 1 pixel solid. Ah. I'm going to get it looking vaguely button-like here. I'll give it a border radius with a dash, and this is going to be even smaller. Let's make this 0.2 em. When you get down to that size, you might even think about, yeah, I'm just going to start using pixels. It's up to you, whatever's easiest. And border, should use my color coding. There we go. And I don't know, should we give it a different background color? Let's try it. Let's see, this is already the light purple over here. So let's see, white maybe? I'm not sure that's going to be wonderful, but for now at least. I would probably want that a little bit shinier looking, but let's go ahead and leave it at that for right now. I'm just looking something, I mean, it will be recognized at this point, right? So how do we get this guy over here? Well, there's a number of things we can do. Floating right might be the first thing you think of, but that's actually not going to work too well, because remember, in order to float something, the things that are going to wrap around it is the text that follows, not the text that's preceded. So if we want these guys to wrap around this, that's not going to work out too well. We could fix that by going to the markup and putting this I before the other two instead, but I want to show you a new technique. I want to do, yeah, let's just do a quick position, just so you see it at least once. We probably won't do anything else with this after this, but there are 3 different kinds of position. There's position, well, there's 4 really. There's position static, which is the way everything's positioned automatically by default. There's position relative, in which you can take something and nudge it short distances in one direction or another, or multiple directions. There's position fixed, in which when you scroll up and down, this one retains its space within the viewport and it does not scroll with you. So if you wanted like a fixed header or a fixed ad or something like that that follows you down the page, that would be position fixed. Or position absolute, which is good if you want to take something and plunk it down a very specific place, but allow it to scroll with the content. So that's what I'm going to do. This is what this looks like. Position fixed, boxed fixed. And just right away, I'm going to just save this and go over here and take a look. And it didn't move it anywhere. It won't move it until I tell it somewhere to go. But what it did do is it lost its position here. It was holding open the header before, and then the header just collapsed behind it. Absolute and fixed position, both of them will take an element out of the normal content flow, and it will allow elements to be stacked on top of or behind each other. Not that that matters for us, but that's why that's happening. So in order to get this to a specific place over here, we're going to choose a couple of directions and give it some values. So I think what I figured out here is top, was it 6 ems, I think? No, well, I don't know. First of all, let's do this, but I think that looks more like I need like 8 ems, actually. Must be misremembering. 8 ems. Yeah, okay, so it's about on a par with the baseline of this text here. And then we'll just move it to the right. So it's measuring now from the top of the viewport, and then if I put right, it's going to measure from the right of the viewport over here. So right, I guess 3 ems. We've been using 3 ems for the margins here. Let's see how that works. Yeah, so there it is. It's a little too crunched over there. It's a little too close to this text. But notice that it is retaining its position over here. And in fact, if we allowed this to continue for these wider widths, it would be silly. It would be completely lost over there, right? But for the mobile view, yeah, I'm not real happy with it, but it'll give us a start. So there's what the code looks like for that. Now there's one more declaration that I want to put on this guy right here. Right now there's something wrong with this one, and that is that there is no hover state that turns into the pointer cursor. Now, you might think, well, okay, fine, but on mobile that doesn't really matter, right? There is no real hover on mobile, right? You either tap or you don't. Yeah, that's true. However, I'm not going to be specifying this for mobile. I'm going to be specifying for narrow devices. It is possible that someone might come in a narrow desktop browser like I'm using here, and in which case that little hover state would be nice to have. So I'm going to put this again in header eyes. The last thing I'm going to do here, the cursor property, and not hover, pointer, like that. Cursor, pointer, and now you get the fun thing where it turns into this, just as if it's a link. Nothing's happening yet. Click on it, nothing happening. We would never want to leave it this way. The last thing you want to do is make a user think that something's a link and then like pull the rug out from under them or pull the football away, right? They would not like that at all. So now we have to do something with it. But for now, that's all we're going to do for that one. Okay, so if you forgot to save and zip up your stuff and submit it to today's submission folder, definitely do it now, because now is when we start jacking with our CSS. I'm going to undo some of the stuff that we did before. Right now the stuff is downstairs here. I'm going to undo that, bring this back upstairs here, and then we're going to make it disappear so that it's not visible there. And then when we come back on Thursday, you're going to see it's going to be a piece of cake, and we'll get this drop down working there. So first things first, CSS, let's see, we need the nav and footer where we did order 1 here. That's where we took both of them and pushed them down to the bottom of the page. I want you to get rid of that line. It should be somewhere near where we're already working if you've organized things at all like I have. I'm not going to, but in the way that I've been doing, I'm going to comment on that instead. So when I save that, boom, it's back upstairs where we don't want it. You'd never want to force people to scroll past this stuff to get to the content. They will not do it. They'll jump out of there quicker than anything and go somewhere else. So I just commented that guy out. And now we just want to take this and make it go away. Not to the, like, we don't want to take it out of our HTML, of course, because we need to be able to bring it back again when we want it. And of course we want it to show up by default out here. But down here in our mobile size, where we're going to be using that drop down, we want that to disappear. So we've got the nav selector right here. And, oh, interesting. Okay, so we've already got our display flex on it. Okay, no problem. We just have to remember that we need to change this back to display flex at some point. So, okay, we've got some fixing to do, no problem. So just take a moment. To make sure I remind myself, I'm not going to delete that. I'm just going to comment out display flex. And instead of doing display flex, we're going to do display none. So it's just another display property. That's how you get something to disappear. There's also there's a different way of doing it called visibility hidden. So visibility property and a hidden value for it. Both will work in slightly different ways. So it just made that disappear. Unfortunately, that means that it probably also made it disappear for all of our wider versions too. We better fix that. So instead of having display flex here, the next place it shows up, we need to put it back in here. So that's going to be at our first media query here. There's the nav. Let's do a display flex here so that at wider screens, it again works. Now while we're at it, and this really is the last thing, we're going to take this header I and all the stuff that we did to it, and whenever we get to something even slightly wider, we're going to make it go away because we don't need it anymore. We only need it for this narrow view for handheld devices so that we can tap down drop-down navigation, anything wider than that, this will disappear and the navigation will just be there visible. So inside the first media query, I'm going to take that header I and do a display none on it.
Hey, Bruce, can you pause for a second?
Yes.
Did we delete anything by any chance recently?
I commented something out. What did I comment out? We were doing the... No, wait, this would be a down in nav here. Hang on a second.
I know we commented out display flex. I mean, did we do anything else specific after that?
No, I think that was the last thing that I commented out. And then on the first media query, I had to put display flex into the nav selector here. Oh, this guy right here. Yeah, the header I, that was the last thing I did. I put display none on the header I. In the first media query there.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. I was just trying to figure out what was missing.
Yeah, that was it. Okay, so now, finally, what should be happening is in the handheld, you've got this button here that's got kind of the cursor hover state. Nothing's happening yet, but we've got the navigation disappeared, although when it does show up, it'll show up top here. And then if we pull this out to the next wider view, and the display none is not working. Why is that not working? Let's see. That's what I selected for, right? The header I. Yeah, header I. Display none. Interesting. Okay, let's see. Now, the first thing that I think of with this is specificity. I wonder if I have to use a more specific selector in order to make this, although I don't know why, because it's not actually even overriding anything. But let me try it. So I know that, let's see, .fast was one of them, FAS. So let me try putting that on here. Yeah, that was it. Oddly, even though I'm not overriding anything in particular, unless there's a conflict with position fixed, I don't know why it would be. So anyway, if that's happening with you, if you put this in and it's not working, then, and always think about this in the future. If there's something that's just a head scratcher and you can't figure out why it wouldn't be overriding something else, try making the selector more specific by adding like a class name or something like that. Especially in ID. IDs are the heavy hitters of the selectors. They are the most specific selectors of all, which is why you want to use them as little as possible. But, so I just made this a little bit more specific by adding a class selector to the selector, and then that wound up doing it. Still not sure why it wasn't working before, but that was the fix. So there it is, and there it's not. Okay, so that's the last thing I did now. Any questions?
So, for some reason, I haven't quite figured out why yet. But as I start to get smaller and smaller, my pixels, my menu isn't disappearing. It's going back to that all the way up at the top, and then it's essentially like in a list format.
Okay, so let me go ahead and stop the recording, and then let's take a look.